The morning my father died, my sister and I found 2 envelopes under his Bible. One had my name on it. The other had Mara's name. My envelope was thin. Hers was thick and sealed with a piece of faded blue tape. Mara held it with both hands, but she did not open it. "What if he knew?" she whispered. At that moment, I understood that my sister had not returned only to say goodbye. She had come home carrying a secret. But our story had started 6 weeks earlier, on the day I pushed open the old wooden gate. The gate made the same long sound I remembered from childhood. The garden behind it was almost gone. Brown leaves covered the path, and tall grass grew around the empty flower beds. My father had once spent every Saturday morning in that garden. He planted roses for my mother and tomatoes for the kitchen. Now the roses were dry, and the tomato plants were only thin sticks in the cold ground. I stood there with one suitcase and listened to the quiet house. I had stayed away for 9 years. During that time, I often told myself that I was too busy to visit. I had work, bills, and a small apartment in the city. The truth was simpler. Coming home made me remember too much. My mother had died in that house. My father and I had argued after the funeral. He wanted me to stay near him, but I wanted to leave. I told him the town was too small for me. He said I was running away. We were both right. A week before I returned, my oldest sister called me. She lived across the country with her husband and 3 children. "Father is getting weaker," she said. "He should not be alone." Our other sister had a new baby and could not travel. Everyone had a reason. Then my oldest sister said, "You have more freedom than the rest of us." It was a gentle sentence, but it hurt. She meant that I had no husband, no children, and no one waiting for me at home. I almost said no. Then I looked around my apartment. The rooms were clean, but they did not feel warm. My job had become a long line of empty days. I woke up tired. I came home tired. I ate dinner beside the window and watched other people walking together below. So I packed one suitcase, took time away from work, and bought a train ticket. Perhaps I came back for my father. Perhaps I also came back because I no longer knew where else to go. I knocked twice before opening the front door. The house smelled of dust, tea, and old wood. A clock moved slowly on the wall, louder than I remembered. My father was sitting beside the living room window. An open Bible rested on his knees. He looked smaller. His white shirt hung loosely from his shoulders, and a grey blanket covered his legs. His hair had become almost completely white. When he saw me, his face changed. "Rachel," he said. He spoke my name as if it were something he had been saving. I walked toward him and kissed his forehead. His skin felt cool. "You came," he said. "I told you I would." He smiled. "You have told me many things." I could not tell whether he was joking. Then he lifted one weak hand and touched my cheek. "You look tired," he said. "So do you." He laughed softly. For a moment, the years between us became smaller. I made tea and found bread in the kitchen. He asked about my job and my apartment. I gave him short answers. He asked whether I had anyone special in my life. "No," I said. He looked at me for a moment, then lowered his eyes. I knew he wanted to ask more. I was thankful when he did not. That evening, I helped him walk to his bedroom. He leaned heavily on my arm, though he tried to hide it. "I can still walk," he said. "I know. I am only letting you feel useful." His voice was weak, but his old humor was still there. After he went to bed, I entered my childhood room. The walls were still pale green. My school books stood on the shelf, and an old music box sat beside the window. I opened it. A small dancer turned slowly while a thin, broken song filled the room. I remembered Mara winding that music box again and again. She used to dance around the room until I shouted at her to stop. Mara was 3 years younger than me. She was loud where I was quiet. She climbed trees, broke rules, and laughed when she was punished. Everyone in town knew her name. At 19, she had a terrible argument with our father. I never learned every detail. I only knew that she left before sunrise with one bag. She did not come back. For the first few years, she sent short letters. She said she was working in restaurants and moving from town to town. Then even the letters stopped. No one had heard her voice in nearly 7 years. The next morning, I made oatmeal and carried it to my father. He ate only a few bites. "You should eat more," I said. "You sound like your mother." "That is not an answer." He pushed the bowl away and looked toward the window. Then he said, "Mara is coming home." I thought I had heard him incorrectly. "What?" "She wrote to me." He reached toward the table and gave me a folded page. There were only 5 lines. "Father, I know I have no right to ask, but I want to come home. I do not know how long I can stay. Please tell me if the door is still open. Mara." There was no address and no explanation. "When did this arrive?" I asked. 4 days ago. "And you did not tell anyone?" "I am telling you." I read the letter again. "Why now?" My father closed his eyes. "Maybe she is finally ready." "Ready for what?" "To stop running." His answer made me angry, though I did not understand why. Perhaps it was because he had used the same words about me. I placed the letter on the table. "She may not come." "She will." "You sound very sure." He opened his eyes and looked directly at me. "She asked whether the door was open." I told her it always was. For the next 5 days, I cleaned the house. I washed the curtains, swept the hall, and changed the sheets in Mara's old room. I opened the windows, though the autumn air was cold. My father watched me work without saying much. Sometimes I caught him staring toward the gate. On the 6th afternoon, a bus stopped near the end of our road. A woman stepped down with a dark coat and a small brown bag. Even from far away, I knew it was Mara. She walked slowly toward the house. Her hair was shorter, and her face was thinner than I remembered. But her eyes had not changed. They were still bright and careful, as if she were always searching for the nearest way out. I stood at the gate. She stopped a few feet away from me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she gave a small smile. "You still stand like mother," she said. "And you still arrive without warning." Her smile disappeared. I immediately wished I had chosen different words. "I wrote," she said. "To father, not to me. I didn't know what to say to you." "Neither did I." She looked past me toward the house. "Is he very sick?" "He is weaker than he admits." Mara nodded. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her bag. "Does he know I'm here?" "He has been watching the gate all week." She took one step forward, then stopped again. "I don't know if I can do this." Before I could answer, the front door opened. My father stood there, holding the wall for support. "Mara," he called. Her bag fell to the ground. She ran past me. My father tried to open his arms, but he almost lost his balance. Mara reached him in time and held him tightly. He placed one shaking hand on the back of her head. "My girl," he whispered. Mara began to cry. I stayed near the gate, watching them. Part of me felt warm. Another part felt strangely left outside. That evening, the 3 of us ate at the kitchen table. My father spoke more than he had since I arrived. He told Mara about neighbors, church members, and people she had known as a child. Mara listened carefully. She asked about his medicine and his doctor. She noticed when his glass was empty and filled it before he asked. This was not the sister I remembered. The old Mara could not sit still for 5 minutes. This woman watched every movement my father made. After dinner, I washed the dishes. Mara stood beside me with a towel. For a while, we worked without speaking. Then she said, "Thank you for preparing my room. How do you know I did it?" Father would have left everything exactly as it was. I handed her a wet plate. "He was certain you would come." "I wasn't." "Then why did you?" She dried the plate slowly. "Because I had nowhere else." Her voice was flat, but her eyes filled with pain. I wanted to ask what had happened. Instead, I turned back to the sink. That night, I heard footsteps in the hall. When I opened my door, Mara was standing outside our father's room. "Is he all right?" I whispered. He was coughing. We listened for a moment. The room became quiet again. Mara leaned against the wall. "He looks so old," she said. "He is old." He wasn't old in my mind. I understood what she meant. When we stayed away, the people we loved did not change in our memories. They waited inside us with the same faces and voices. Then one day, we returned and saw all the years we had missed. During the next week, Mara and I developed a simple routine. I cooked and cleaned. Mara organized the medicine and helped our father wash and dress. We did not discuss who should do what. We simply noticed what was needed. Our father became happier. He liked hearing us move through the house. Sometimes he closed his eyes and smiled while we spoke in the kitchen. One morning, he asked us to take him into the garden. Mara and I supported him on both sides. We moved slowly along the path. When he saw the dead roses, he shook his head. "I have failed your mother," he said. "They will grow again," Mara told him. "Not without care." "Then I'll care for them." He looked at her with surprise. "You plan to stay until spring?" Mara's face became still. "I don't know." My father touched one dry branch. "People and gardens are not so different," he said. "Both can look dead when they are only waiting." Mara turned away. Later that afternoon, I found her alone behind the house. She was sitting on an old wooden step with her head in her hands. "Are you sick?" I asked. "No." "Did father upset you?" "No." "Then what is wrong?" She looked at me. "Why do you keep asking questions when you don't really want the answers?" Her words shocked me. "I am trying to help." "No. You are trying to understand whether I deserve to be here. That isn't fair. Isn't it?" She stood and walked toward the river path. I let her go. For the rest of the day, we avoided each other. That night, our father had trouble breathing. Mara called me from his room, and we helped him sit up. I opened the window while she rubbed his back. His face was pale. "Should we call the doctor?" I asked. "No hospital," he said. "You don't decide that alone," I replied. He gave me a weak smile. "You have been home 1 week, and already you are the boss." Mara did not smile. She found his medicine, gave him water, and stayed beside him until his breathing became easier. I watched her hands. They were steady, but her whole body was shaking. After our father fell asleep, we went into the kitchen. Mara gripped the edge of the table. "I thought he was dying." "So did I." "I am not ready." "No one is." She looked at me with anger. "You had 9 years. So did you." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Mara's face changed. Then she turned and walked away. The next morning, her bag was packed. It stood beside the front door. I found Mara in the kitchen drinking coffee. "Are you leaving?" "I think it would be better." "For whom?" "For everyone. Father will be hurt." "He was hurt long before I came." I lowered my voice. "You cannot disappear every time something becomes difficult." She looked at me across the table. "You disappeared too, Rachel. You just did it in a more respectable way." Her words hit the deepest part of me. I had stayed in one city. I had kept the same job. I had paid my bills. But she was right. I had also run away. Before I could answer, we heard a heavy sound from the hallway. Our father had fallen. We rushed to him. He was lying near the stairs, trying to push himself up. "Don't move," Mara said. "I only wanted water." "You should have called us," I told him. "You were busy fighting." Mara and I looked at each other. Even on the floor, he had heard everything. The doctor came an hour later. Nothing was broken, but our father had become much weaker. He should not be alone, even for a few minutes, the doctor told us. After the doctor left, Mara carried her bag back upstairs. She did not say she was staying. She did not need to. 2 days later, I went into Mara's room to bring clean towels. She was outside with our father. A small cloth bag lay open on the bed. I did not mean to look inside, but a silver bracelet caught my eye. It was tiny, made for a baby. The name Sophie was written on a small round piece of metal. Beside it was a photograph. Mara was sitting in a hospital bed, holding a newborn baby against her chest. She looked young, frightened, and deeply happy. I heard footsteps behind me. Mara stood in the doorway. Her face became white. "What are you doing?" "I brought towels." "You went through my things." The bag was open. She crossed the room and took the bracelet from my hand. "Who is Sophie?" I asked. "That is none of your business. The baby is yours." Mara placed the photograph back inside the bag. "Please leave." "Where is she?" Mara did not answer. "Mara, where is your daughter?" "She died." The room became completely still. I felt as if the floor had moved under me. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't." "I didn't know." No one knew. She sat on the bed and held the bracelet in her closed hand. I remained near the door. After a long silence, she began to speak. She had met a man in another state. His name was Colin, and he promised her a stable life. At first, he was kind. Then he started disappearing for days. He lost jobs, borrowed money, and blamed Mara for everything that went wrong. When Mara became pregnant, she believed the baby might change him. It did not. Sophie was born early. Her lungs were weak, and she stayed in the hospital for several weeks. Colin visited twice. Mara visited every day. She sat beside the small bed, sang quiet songs, and promised her daughter that they would leave the city together. But Sophie became sick again. One rainy morning, while Mara was holding her, the baby stopped breathing. Mara was 25 years old. She had no money, no family near her, and no idea how to return home. "I should have called," she said. "But I was ashamed." "You had nothing to be ashamed of. You don't know everything." "Then tell me." She shook her head. "I chose Colin over father. I stayed even after I knew what kind of man he was. I kept believing I could fix him. When Sophie died, I felt that I had failed her. You did not cause her illness. I should have given her a better life. She knew your voice. She knew you were there." Mara's eyes filled with tears. That was not enough. I sat beside her. For the first time since she came home, I took her hand. "What happened after that?" "Colin left. I moved again and again. Every place felt wrong." "Why didn't you tell father?" "Because he warned me about Colin. He said the man would destroy my life. Father says many hard things when he is afraid." "He was right. That does not mean he stopped loving you." Mara stared at the bracelet. "I don't want him to know about Sophie." "Why?" "He is already dying. I won't give him one more sorrow." I promised not to tell him. But after that day, I saw Mara differently. Her silence was not coldness. It was weight. Every laugh, every kind word, and every peaceful moment had to rise through years of pain. Our father seemed to feel it too. He never asked for details about her life. He only asked her to sit near him. Sometimes he held her hand while he slept. One Sunday, he was too weak to attend church. Mara found his Bible and placed a chair beside his bed. "I can read for you," she said. Our father opened his eyes. "You used to hate Sunday readings." "I hated sitting still." "You still do." Mara smiled. She read a short passage about a father waiting for his lost child to return. Her voice shook once, but she continued. When she finished, our father looked at her. "The door was never closed," he said. Mara lowered her eyes. "I know." "No," he replied. "You are only beginning to know." That evening, snow began to fall. It was the first snow of the year. Soft white pieces covered the dead garden and the road. The power went out after dark. Mara lit candles while I built a small fire in the living room. We moved our father's chair close to the warmth. The three of us sat together in the moving light. For a while, no one spoke. Then our father said, "Your mother loved nights like this." "She hated the cold," I said. "She hated being cold." "That is different." Mara laughed softly. He closed his eyes. "She always worried about both of you." "She had good reasons," Mara said. "She worried because she loved you, not because you were bad." Mara looked toward the fire. Sometimes those things feel the same to a child. Our father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Parents also make mistakes." I had rarely heard him admit that. He continued in a weaker voice. "I thought rules could protect you. When you broke them, I became harder. I did not understand that fear can sound like anger." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "I said terrible things before I left." "So did I. You told me never to come back." Our father slowly shook his head. "I said it because I believed you would turn around. I didn't." "I know." Mara covered her face. He reached out his hand. She moved to him and knelt beside his chair. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He touched her hair. "You came home. That doesn't change what I did. It changes today." Mara cried silently against his knees. I looked away, giving them the small privacy that a crowded room could still hold. Later, when Mara went to bring more wood, our father turned to me. "You are angry with me too," he said. "I'm not angry. You always were a poor liar." I watched the fire. "You made me feel guilty for leaving. I was lonely. So was I. I know that now." I looked at him. "Why didn't you call more often? Why didn't you?" Neither of us had an answer. He held out his hand. "When I took it," he said, "we wasted enough years." The power returned before midnight. But something had already changed in the dark. In the following weeks, our father's health fell quickly. Some mornings, he did not know where he was. Other mornings, his mind was clear, and he spoke as if nothing had changed. He asked Mara about the garden. He asked me about the city. He told us where important papers were kept and which neighbor had borrowed his tools. One afternoon, he asked me to bring him a wooden box from his desk. Inside were old letters, photographs, and our mother's wedding ring. He gave the ring to me. "Keep it safe," he said. Then he took out a small photograph of Mara as a child. In the picture, she was holding a broken bird's nest. "She always tried to save things," he said. "Even things she could not save." He looked at me carefully. Sometimes people blame themselves for what was never in their control. My heart began to beat faster. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you listen more than she does." "Father, what do you know?" He closed the box. "I know my daughter is carrying grief." "Did she tell you?" "No." "Then how?" A parent does not need every fact. I wanted to tell him about Sophie. But I had made a promise. He touched the closed box. Tell Mara she has nothing to fear from me. You should tell her yourself. I have tried. Try again. He smiled. You sound like your mother. That night, I almost told Mara what he had said. But she looked tired, and I waited. The next day, our father slept most of the afternoon. The day after that, the doctor told us he did not have much time. Mara stood beside the kitchen window after the doctor left. I thought coming home would make this easier, she said. It made it real. I don't want the last thing between us to be silence. Then speak. What can I say now? The truth. She looked toward his bedroom. I can't tell him about Sophie. You don't have to tell him everything. What if he thinks I wasted my life? He doesn't. You don't know that. I do. I told her about the photograph and what our father had said. Mara pressed one hand over her mouth. He knows. He knows you are grieving. He may not know why. She began to cry. I should have told him years ago. You can tell him now. She walked to his room but stopped at the door. I stayed in the hall. Mara sat beside his bed and took his hand. At first, her voice was too low for me to hear. Then I heard one name. Sophie. I walked away. Whatever came next belonged to them. Nearly an hour later, Mara found me in the kitchen. Her face was wet with tears, but she looked calm. What did he say? I asked. He asked whether she had my eyes. I could not speak. Mara sat at the table. I told him she did. Did you tell him everything? Enough. And what did he say? Mara looked toward the bedroom. He said he wished he could have held her. Then she placed her face in her hands and cried. I sat beside her until the room grew dark. Our father died 3 mornings later. There was no struggle. The night before, Mara and I stayed beside him. We told him stories from our childhood. Mara reminded him of the time she painted the kitchen door bright yellow while he was at work. I reminded him of the winter he carried both of us home after we fell through the ice near the river. He smiled, though his eyes stayed closed. Before midnight, he whispered our mother's name. Then he said, "My girls are home." Those were his last clear words. At sunrise, I woke in the chair beside his bed. The room was pale and quiet. I touched his hand. It was cold. Mara understood as soon as she saw my face. She knelt beside him and rested her head against his chest. Neither of us screamed. The silence was too large for that. People from the church came throughout the day. They brought soup, bread, flowers, and stories about our father. One man said my father had repaired his roof without taking money. An old woman said he visited her every week after her husband died. I knew my father had been kind, but I had not known how many lives he had quietly touched. The funeral was held 3 days later. Snow covered the road, but the church was full. Mara sat beside me in the front row. She held my hand during the final song. After everyone left the house that evening, the rooms felt empty. There were cups on the table and wet footprints near the door. I began cleaning because I did not know what else to do. Mara entered our father's room. A few minutes later, she called my name. His Bible lay on the desk. Under it were 2 envelopes. One said Rachel. The other said Mara. My letter was short. My dear Rachel. You spent many years trying to prove that you did not need anyone. I hope you understand now that needing love is not weakness. Do not build your next life as a punishment for your old one. Go where you can be useful, but also go where you can be happy. You were never a disappointment to me. Father. I read it twice. Then I looked at Mara. She still had not opened hers. What if he knew, she whispered. He knew enough. She broke the blue tape. Her letter was longer. I did not ask to read it. Mara moved to the window and read alone. Halfway through, her shoulders began to shake. When she finished, she pressed the paper against her heart. "What did he say?" I asked. She smiled through her tears. "He said Sophie was part of this family, even if we never met her." I waited. "He said there was nothing I could confess that would make me less his daughter." Mara sat on the bed. "He forgave me before I came home. Maybe he never believed there was anything to forgive." She looked down at the letter. "I hated myself for so long. Then perhaps that is the person you must forgive now." For the next month, we stayed in the house together. We sorted clothes, repaired broken shelves, and placed our father's papers in boxes. Every object seemed to hold a memory. We found my mother's old recipe book with flour still trapped between the pages. We found Mara's yellow paint on the kitchen door, hidden under 3 newer layers. We found a drawing I had made of our family when I was 8. Everyone had very long arms because I wanted us all to hold hands. Some discoveries made us laugh. Others stopped us in the middle of the room. Grief did not move in a straight line. It arrived like weather. A quiet morning could become painful because of one cup, one coat, or one familiar smell. Then a terrible afternoon could suddenly become gentle because Mara remembered a joke. One day, she walked into town and returned with an application form. "The library needs help," she said. "What kind of help?" "Sorting books, cleaning shelves, and working at the front desk." "That sounds peaceful." "I think I need peaceful." She filled out the form that night. A week later, she got the job. It did not pay much, but she came home on her first day with a light in her face. She told me about a boy who borrowed 4 books about birds and an old man who came only to read the newspaper. I had not heard her speak with such interest for years. Mara also began working in the garden. The ground was hard, but she removed dead branches and covered the roots before the deeper winter came. She repaired the fence and ordered flower seeds for spring. I watched her from the kitchen window. She was no longer staying because she had nowhere else to go. She was staying because she had chosen a place. One evening, she told me she wanted to keep the house. "Are you sure?" I asked. "No. But I want to try. The roof needs work." "I know. The pipes are old." "I know. It will be difficult." She smiled. "You sound like father." I laughed. Then she became serious. "This was the place I ran from. Maybe it can also be the place where I stop running." I understood. A few days later, I told her I was returning to the city. She became quiet. "You don't have to go yet." "I know. Your apartment will still be there." I gave it up. She looked surprised. "Then where will you live?" "I'll find somewhere smaller." "What about your old job?" "I don't want it anymore." "Do you know what you do want?" "No." Mara smiled. "That sounds dangerous." "It feels honest." On my last morning, we ate breakfast at the kitchen table. There were 2 cups instead of 3. The empty chair still hurt, but it no longer made the room feel completely empty. Mara walked with me to the gate. The garden was brown and covered with frost. "Come back in spring," she said. "I will." "You always say that." This time, there was no anger in her voice. I hugged her. "I mean it now." She held me tightly. "Be happy, Rachel." "You too." As I walked down the road, I looked back. Mara was still standing beside the old wooden gate. The house behind her looked small, but it no longer looked forgotten. On the train, I took my father's letter from my bag. I read the sentence again. "Do not build your next life as a punishment for your old one." For years, I had believed that my life was simply empty. Now I saw that I had helped make it that way. I had avoided love because love could be lost. I had avoided home because home could hurt. But being safe was not the same as being alive. I found a small apartment near a public park. Instead of returning to my old company, I accepted a job at a community center. The pay was lower, but the work felt real. I helped organize meals for older people who lived alone. I answered phones, prepared rooms, and listened to stories. Many people came only because they wanted someone to remember their names. I understood that feeling. Every Sunday evening, I called Mara. She told me about the library and the house. She complained about the roof, the cold mornings, and the rabbits eating her plants. Then her voice always became softer when she spoke about the garden. In March, she mailed me a photograph. Small green leaves were growing beside the porch. On the back, she had written, "Not dead. Only waiting." I placed the photograph beside my father's letter. In late April, I returned. When the bus stopped near our road, I saw Mara waiting. She looked healthier. Her face was fuller, and her hair moved in the warm wind. Behind her, the garden was filled with new color. Red, yellow, and white flowers grew along the path. The old roses had green leaves again. "You did all this?" I asked. "Not alone. A group of children from the library had helped her plant the flowers. Neighbors repaired the fence, and someone from church painted the window frames. The house had not only welcomed Mara back. The town had welcomed her too. She led me to a small tree near the riverside of the garden. Tiny white flowers covered its branches. "What is this?" I asked. "A flowering cherry tree. It's beautiful." Mara touched one branch gently. "I planted it for Sophie." There was no fear in her voice when she said the name. No shame. Only love. We stood beside the tree for a long moment. Then we carried my bag into the house. The rooms looked brighter. There were new curtains in the kitchen and books beside the living room chair. My father's Bible still rested on the small table near the window. Mara had placed his glasses on top of it. That evening, we sat outside with tea. The sky became gold behind the trees. "I used to think home was a place that could reject you," Mara said. "Sometimes it can. I also thought I had to become a different person before I returned." "Did you?" "No. I came back as I was. And Father loved you as you were." She nodded. "What does home mean to you now?" she asked. I looked at the old gate, the new flowers, and the light inside the kitchen. "Maybe home is where the truth does not send you away." Mara smiled. "And maybe it is where someone keeps the door open." The wind moved through the garden. For 1 second, I imagined our father standing among the roses with his old hat slightly crooked. I could almost hear him telling us that the plants needed water. Then the image disappeared, but the warmth remained. Coming home had not changed our past. It had not returned the people we had lost or repaired every mistake we had made. It had given us something quieter. It had given us the courage to stop hiding from our own lives. Mara had found a place where she could begin again. I had learned that leaving was not always freedom, and returning was not always failure. Sometimes the road away from home is necessary. Sometimes the road back is even more important. As darkness covered the garden, Mara turned on the porch light. The old house shone behind us. This time, neither of us was waiting for permission to stay. We were already home. But one question stayed in my mind. Do grown children have a duty to return home and care for their parents, even when the past is painful and they have lives of their own? And was Mara right to tell Father about Sophie before he died? Perhaps the truth gave both of them peace. But perhaps some people would choose silence, believing that love can also mean protecting someone from pain. What would you have done? Would you return home, even after many years of distance? And would you tell a dying parent a painful truth, or carry the secret alone?